Good afternoon.
Wow. Hello.
Wow.
Has David left the premises? Has David gone far, far away? Well, I guess we'll have to figure this out on our own. Oh, there he is. David, did you want to be... David?
No, yes. Left.
Did you want to do something, or should we take over?
Please take over.
Well, what do you think we should do? Ladies, think we should ask for questions and just go from there?
I think we should.
I think so too.
Well,
Questions! It's your show, you're the interviewers.
Well, one of the questions I'm very keen to ask each of you, if we move along the line, is, and I'll see some eyes rolling, what made you decide to become an actor?
Oh, dear.
Swift process of elimination. For me, I graduated from university with a liberal arts degree, and sincerely, I was qualified to do nothing. Absolutely, I would not have made a good secretary. I would not have made a good teacher, and so I had to default to my avocation, which was theater. I loved theater, but I questioned greatly if I should try to be professional. And I really didn't have many options, so I went to New York City with a good friend, and other good friends helped me from there, and sort of became an actress by backing into it. I didn't go face forward. I was totally didn't know what else to do. Whether I was good at it or not was up for debate. But
Anybody? Go.
Hi. Ooh, sorry. I'm from Los Angeles, and I grew up in a family that was in the entertainment industry. My father was a writer and a producer in television, and my mother was an actress. I don't know if anybody watched the old Dick Van Dyke Show and The Nanny, and my mother is Ann Gilbert. I don't know if that's meaningful to you, but anyway, so I grew up with the language of acting and the language of this industry, and it was sort of like I never even was exposed to any other idea of what I wanted to do in my life, and so I just sort of, it was an assumption that I was going to do this, and it paid off okay for me. But it's always been a question about what might what might if I had not made that decision. But I'm really glad I did, and I wouldn't be here if I hadn't. So that's my story.
And I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up in a family that absolutely did not want me to be an actress. And I knew that I wanted to be an actress at 5 years old. I never had any other choice of decision. It was just always that. And I would sit there, I grew up on a farm, so I would make all the animals sit there and watch me while I acted, and I wrote and directed my own plays with just me and my animals. And my family tried very hard to dissuade me from being an actor, and I just refused, and eventually at 18 I went to drama school, and I did what I love and adore, and I'm so happy and so blessed that I was able to do it. So there.
Wow, that's wonderful. I don't know that I actually made the decision either. I think I just loved movies, and I loved mimicking accents and things like that, and I knew that being a lawyer would make me want to shoot myself in the head. And so I think I just went to Northwestern University for acting, and it just kind of went on from there. I'm not sure it was the wisest choice, but nonetheless, it just happened. Yeah, not very fascinating, I'm afraid.
I think I kind of stumbled into it because they put me in the school play when I was in grade 4. And it just ballooned from there. I actually wanted to be a vet for the longest period of time, and still somewhat to a certain extent do, but I didn't think I was smart enough to get into vet school. So acting was my default zone.
What does that say about actors?
Okay. In 7th grade, Patty DeRocher was sitting next to me at lunch, and she said, really, I swear to God. She said, what do you want to do for a living? I said, I want to be an actress, because we were doing Oklahoma in the school play. And she laughed at me. And that was it. She laughed at me, and I was like, well, screw you. I'm going to be an actress. And so I went to drama school, and here I am with you guys. And Armin. Yay.
I guess that I wanted to be a ballet dancer. I wasn't very good. I think I kind of sold my dancing with my acting, right? So people didn't look at my feet, they looked at my face. But when I came from a very academic family, professional doctors. My mother was a psychologist. My mother was an academic. My eldest brother's an academic. When I was 13, my dad said when I was 15, you are not going to be a ballet dancer, so just get rid of that idea. He said, you will destroy your body. It's a short life. You're going to lecture in English. So I went to university, did psychology and drama. No, psychology and English. The idea was that I was going to lecture in English or I was going to be a psychologist, one or the other. But I did a year of drama because I had 1 free credit. And by the end of that year, I actually thought, I will die if I have to teach children or young adults English who don't want to be taught English. I can remember sitting in a tutorial studying a truly beautiful William Blake poem about a rose that has been infected by a worm. And I was blown away by this piece of poetry. And the other kids were like this, and no one was really paying attention. I was the only person listening. And I thought, I'll die if I spend the rest of my life trying to persuade people to fall in love with poetry. And so I called my mum and dad and I said, I'm going to act. And my father got in the car and my mother said, I'm coming with you. And they drove over the 120k to the university where I was studying, and my father said, no. And I said, yes. And so I did. And bless her, my mother actually, so I got the various degrees. But my mother sent me to England, to acting school. And it was wonderful, because she paid for my lessons. It was very expensive to go to England. And my father never really forgave me. But my mum was quite pleased. So there we are. And actually, the reason why... Sorry, I am talking for a long time. The reason why I decided that I wanted to act was that I thought that if you were doing it to the absolute best of your ability, it would engage you as a human being on every level, sort of physically, emotionally, mentally. And I just thought that would be a fantastic way to live. And actually, I think I've had the most privileged working life. I think what we do is an enormous privilege, because you are allowed to live in other people's lives and understand other people's lives in a way you never would. So, for what it's worth.
Bravo.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think we'll hand over to the audience now. If you want to ask a question, could you please put up your hand and I'll get to you as that gentleman was first. Here we go.
Hello, ladies, again. Hey, real quick question. How many of you were Star Trek fans before you got a role, and how many of you actually went because you were Star Trek, you, in the back of your minds, wanted to be a character? How many of you went after that?
Well, I was a fan, but you just go on auditions because they call and say, do you want to go on this audition? Right. You know, but I was a fan. My brother is a rocket scientist because we watched the original series. He was going to be a scientist, but he's a rocket scientist because of that, and I was a fan. Wow. And when Armin got Deep Space Nine, my brother became a rock star among rocket scientists.
Oh, how cool. Lovely.
My brother was a big Star Trek fan of the classic Trek, and we used to watch it. I watched it every once in a while. I'm obviously a fan of Star Trek fans. I'm not a sci-fi person. I love science, love fiction, not so much together. Too much technology for me. And I had actually been called to audition as a doctor on Star Trek. I just come to Hollywood. I'd done some kind of little show or whatever, and I came in. And the coolest thing about a Star Trek audition for me then was that you went in, and there were all sorts of races and ages of women auditioning for this doctor, and it was great. Got the role, and they said, my agent called and said, oh, by the way, they need you to come in Monday to get measured for your ears. And it's not kind of a thing you hear so often. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, you're a Vulcan. I was like, I'm a Vulcan? Mike, I call my brother, Mike, I'm a Vulcan. So we smuggled my brother onto the set. And, you know, I did all sorts of campy Vulcan shots, which were totally not Vulcan. And I mean, after that, the fun thing about Star Trek as well, which just doesn't happen in other shows, is they say, oh, well, we'll bring you back to play a half Klingon, and then we'll kill you and we'll bring you in and do something else. So that's my fanhood, is for sort of from the inside out as opposed to outside in. Anybody?
May I say, very, very similar provenance. My older brother loved Star Trek. He didn't become a rocket scientist, but he was older, so he had domain over the television. And so when Star Trek was on, we watched Star Trek. Now I too am you know, science fiction is not what I would go to see at the movies necessarily, but I will say this. Star Trek, the original series, left a very deep impression upon me. I was very young, and I think I was a little too obsessed with love and boys, and I was prepubescent. And all those themes, now think about it, every week it was some large-bosomed, teased hair blonde with a miniskirt on and boots, you know, telling Kirk, I've got the disease too, Jim. And or it was Nimoy in the cave with Mariette Hartley. How hot is that he is torn between staying with her in her leather loin covering and such, and bikini, or going, and he's unemotional, right? So this was like a marvelous, delicious little conflict he was having. And then to watch Nichelle and Shatner be forced to kiss one another at the behest of some, you know, being that's watching them. Now this sort of stayed with me. This stayed with me, and this is something I use to this day. Right up here, right up here. It's in the bank. It's in the storage bank. Fantasies, you know. Someone's watching, and they're making me do this. Oh no! I love it. I love it. And that's where it was born. So this magnificent social statement, this first interracial kiss, went right over my head. I was more engaged by the dynamic between these characters. Stayed with me forever.
That's almost TMI. It's almost too much information.
Sorry, but every woman out there knows it works.
Okay, then.
Yes, so you're a virgin every time.
Right. I wish it was ever thus. Anyway, for me, no, I didn't really know anything about Star Trek or science fiction or anything, because we didn't have television until we were really quite old. And then when I got here, to the States, I wasn't really watching that. I was doing other things. So it was a surprise to me. And then when they called me in after I got, I was playing because I had a sort of career of playing bossy women. And so when my first one was a commander and I had to go in and get the makeup on, I thought, okay, fine. So it was only after I played the first Romulan that I got sort of hooked, and then it became great fun, and it became more of a game of how to make a commanding sort of bossy woman be like a more approachable, more complex version, because they were always played as rather bossy, women, and that was that, and so then it became more fun. And then I became hooked on going to I love going to the movies and seeing those ships come over your head as they come, and I love all that. So now I'm completely hooked, and I go and see all the science fiction movies. That's it.
I think for me, I remember getting the call to go in, and I was super, super uncomfortable with the jargon of doing the show. And I remember reading the sides, the scenes that they sent for the audition, and I was really, really just, this is not me, I don't do this well, and my whole thing with picking what I would go for and not go for as an actor was really, if I feel like I can do it well, I'll go for it. If I don't see that I could do it well, I back way off and I don't want to take the risk. But so I passed on the audition. And somehow, because it was Junie Lowry was casting the show, and I already had a relationship with her, and somehow she and whoever else was involved, they pushed for me to do it, and I was really, really blessed that that happened, because that does not happen when you pass in this business, where they come back to you, and it happened 3 times with Lal, and the last time they sent me a copy of data lore to watch, and I'd never seen the show. My stepfather was actually in the original Star Trek. He played the bartender in The Trouble with Tribbles. But that was all I knew. I really didn't know the show. I mean, I knew from the images, but I didn't know anything. And I watched Data Lore, and I watched it with my husband, and I was like, oh God, you know, I'm so bad at confrontation. I do not like to say no, and I don't like to be in a conflict. And I was in this position where I felt like, God, this is weird, and I love Junie, and I don't want to not be on her list if I don't want to do this. But I watched that show, and it was so good. I was like, I want to be on this show. I don't care. Now I get it. I want to do it. And I went in, and it was Jonathan Frakes. It was his first directing, and I got the part, and it was the best effing part. And I love that I was in that show. And it's a huge blessing, because I get to come here, and I get to be with buddies and hang out and meet the fans, and I understand now on the other side of it why it is so meaningful. I really do. I did not at all when he was asking beforehand. I didn't get it at all. And while I have the mic, I'm going to be greedy for a second, okay? I have to pitch something, because I don't know that I'm going to have an opportunity to talk to this many people this weekend. But on a totally different subject, my husband and my daughter and I worked together as a team, and we started doing this a few years ago when she was in high school, and we wrote a screenplay, and we raised the money, and we produced it, and I'm in it, and we got it released, and it's out there, called The Mooring. It's a horror thriller, but we're working on another project that we're trying to get a base for on social media, and I'm a real baby with social media. I don't know how to do it. I'm just sort of learning and finding my way. But if you come over to my table, I have a flyer that I want to hand to everybody that has my information. If you go on Facebook, to go to Hallie Todd on Facebook, or go to the firemanmovie.com, or go to the Fireman Movie Facebook, and please, please, please like it. And I got to tell you, I'm going to be really honest with you. In about 2 weeks, we are going to be doing a Kickstarter to raise some money. But so it's going to be really intense, in your face kind of promotion. But just hang with me. I'm not saying donate to the movie. I'm just saying hang with me until that is over, and be part of the base, so you're getting me off. Oh my God, that fed into my neuroses on a level that you can't even possibly understand, that the mic cut out. Anyway, thank you for letting me take this moment to do this, because this is super important to my family. It's a heart piece. We're very, very excited about it. My next thing I'm going to be in, my husband's directing. Okay, next person's turn. Thank you.
I would just like to add that Hallie said she's very uncomfortable talking. Do you believe that? Because I don't. I came to Star Trek late. I think it was, you may not know this, but because of the massive Canadian inferiority complex, we make a habit of noticing and pointing out when someone else is Canadian. Oh, did you know that person is Canadian? And so, oh, there you are. And so, of course, Mr. Shatner, being Canadian, in the Canadian theatrical circles, was a big deal. And so I religiously watched it in reruns when I was going through university, and I watched it late at night. And when I was at Stratford, which I also worked at, I started out doing Gilbert and Sullivan, and I was in the chorus because I was very young and not good enough to get a big part yet. And it was fun doing chorus work, but you would get board, and we were very naughty, and we would come on stage and mutter Star Trek lines to each other in the midst of our little singing and dancing numbers, and the other person had to guess which episode it came from. And we had a mixed bag with that, but our favorite one was actually the one with Michael Pollard, and we'd all be coming on stage saying, "No more blah, blah, blah." And I don't think the audience ever knew. But I had no thought that I would end up being part of this universe. I just kind of, as the other ladies have said, that the audition came up, and I went for a couple of them before I finally landed Bator, and now here I am. Your turn.
I grew up in South Africa, and the year after I went to acting school, television came to South Africa. So I grew up without television entirely. So I have this enormous black hole where my cultural references should be. And amongst them was a black hole in respect of Star Trek. I'd heard the phrase, "Beam me up, Scotty," but I had no idea what it meant. And I got the 3 Borg Queen scenes sent by my agent, and I said, "Well, where's the script?" And they said, "No, they're just the sides." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to go in on the basis of sides. How can I possibly do a good audition?" And she said, "No, you don't understand. No one sees this script." So I went in, and I must say thank you to Junie Lowry, who is a very special woman. She's a casting director in LA, and she has helped more people than one could possibly name, because she was very helpful to me. I was on her first job, and she's helped me ever since. Yeah. Anyway, I did the first audition, and as I was on my feet doing it, I thought, oh my goodness, I really want to be this character. And I thought I had done a horrible audition. It was still the days before mobile phones. So I walked out of the audition, and I ran to the parking lot, and I got in my car, and I drove out, and I stopped at the first payphone I could find, and I called my agent, and I said, "I totally messed up, but I really want to play this character. I didn't get it before, but I got it while I was there doing it." And we didn't hear from them for 4 weeks. And I thought, oh well, another one bites the dust. And then they called me, and they said, "Come in and do it again." And I went in, same people, Jonathan, Junie, and I did it again. And as I walked to my car, they made the offer. And I cannot tell you what a life-enhancing experience it was to make it, and to be here with everyone today. It's very special, and it's totally unique to Star Trek. Thank you. Yeah, first one.
Ladies, do you prefer playing villains or good guys? Specifically to Carolyn.
I only ever play bad guys. I think I've played 2 nice women in my life, 3 maybe. I love villains. I love playing villains because they're so complex, and I relish the chance to be able to really go into the dark side. I have a really good dark side, so I love to sit there, and because I don't have to live in the dark side. I've lived there, and I don't have to do that anymore. So I like to visit it just for these characters, and I don't mind. You know, there was a great saying is that in America that they say that the English don't mind being disliked and the Americans don't want to be disliked. They always have to find something charming about their characters. I just wanted to be as unpleasant as I possibly could, and it was always great fun. And I love playing villains.
I think when you have a deep voice and are somewhat tall, you get slotted in that direction. For example, I'm sure there are many roles that Hallie auditioned for that I would never, ever, ever get a shot at. And Hallie, have you ever played a villain?
I don't think I don't have a memory right now.
I would guess perhaps not. I mean,
like-
it's a pure physical thing that casting Junie and other casting directors just sort of make a decision about what villains are. Now, you've done a bit of both, but because you often play sort of the more sympathetic roles as well, but usually you get slotted into one place or the other.
English too.
I'm a villain in the next one.
You're going to be a villain in the next one?
The next thing I'm doing, I'm
Oh, great.
I'm a villain. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So that'll be fun.
Yeah. I have had a fair mix of playing both, and I just really enjoy acting. So it doesn't really matter whether they're good guys or bad guys. I get a kick. I really enjoy the exploration. I have, however, played one bad guy that I actually deeply regret, because she was close enough to reality to, I think, be mind-bendingly disturbing, and that's a character called Christabella in Silent Hill. And I truly wish I hadn't played her, because she's out there, and I wish she wasn't. I don't know if any of you know the character.
Yes.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
Another question from the audience. That's a nice easy one, and then we'll get...
Ladies, we were just listening to Marina Sirtis, who was saying that on Star Trek, when your character gets cleavage, their brains go away, and the inverse being true, that when your character loses cleavage, the brains come rushing back. And I wondered if you would agree with her, and why.
Not if you are a Klingon. Not at all. I can't speak for anyone else, but I think our characters were very busty and very brainy.
I don't have cleavage, so it's
Yeah,
only,
no, neither do I.
it's only by the grace of the brilliance of the costume department and Bob Blackman particularly that I've ever had cleavage in my life. So I just enjoyed cleavage, that's all. Come on.
My mind's going into a much, I was about to say much deeper place, and that's not really fair, but there's a part of me that it's one of the reasons that I have a tidge of a problem with science fiction, because for me, I think that, for example, one of the new Star Trek movies, I saw it on a plane, and I thought, okay, now, this isn't about cleavage, it's about women. And I thought, okay, so you have this Captain Pike who's in his mid-50s, and he's looking all sexy, and he's a hero. And where's the woman that is his age? I'll tell you, this is no disrespect, by the way, to the actress who played her. They frumped her up purposefully, but she was on the bridge for about 5 minutes. Don't know if you remember her. And she was kind of not quick enough to help them all when they were falling or something. So 17-year-old Chekhov comes running in. And you don't see that woman ever again. And I thought they sent her to the rec lounge to pour coffee and give out pie. And so when I hear those kind of questions and I hear those kind of discussion, my mind goes to, or even villain and good person. I just think it's about the complexity or lack thereof. And so I get a little curmudgeonly, which isn't very nice. But I mean, it wasn't a cleavage question. I apologize. My mind went somewhere else. But so there you go. That was a bit of grit, mental grit in my shoe about that movie. I just thought, well, damn. And and the guys aren't stripping down to their underwear and kind of running through hallways with ponytails, flipping as if they're supposed to be respectable. Just a thought. Just saying. A little crabby about it, as you can tell.
I played a child, so I don't have any. I can't answer that one about the cleavage because I was covered up.
Yeah. No cleavage.
Well, I've done a lot with cleavage, and I've done a lot without
Yes,
clothes.
you have.
I have. I thank you, darling. If you got cleavage, I have cleavage, or in every movie I ever do, mostly. And the trick is always to convince the people that I'm also got a brain, and that you know, I fought it in the 70s, and I now just develop the brain rather more than the boobs, because the boobs, you know, they just get bigger with age, but the brain is also getting bigger with age. So they just have to deal with me as a sort of that sort of character. You know, I have a brain. I won't play somebody who doesn't have a brain. If I'm supposed to, if I'm dressed up as a sexy person, I have to have a brain, and it's as simple as that.
Hello. Just very quickly, Alice, because you just mentioned it, I have to tell you, your portrayal of Christabella elevated the entire movie. Aww. And I have to tell you, the Christabella character is so important because it is settled in reality, and it addresses an issue that is quite real and a concern for many people. So the entire topic of what Christabella was about really was important, and I deeply like the movie because of your portrayal. But
thank you.
A quick question to all of you about Star Trek 13, the next one. Would you play a part, and if you could choose, which part, any type of alien, any type of new character, because it couldn't be a character that you already played because it's in a different time frame, but if you could be on the next Star Trek movie, who would you like to play?
Q.
If I were in another Star Trek movie, I actually would like to play the Borg Queen. Sorry. No, and the reason why is that she actually is really, really fascinating. And since playing the Borg Queen, I have read a lot of Eastern philosophy. And you lay the Borg Queen over that, and you get something really interesting. And I would love to explore that. I imagine the writers must have had that as a reference in their head, but I think it would be really interesting.
I would want to be a Vulcan.
You'd be a great Vulcan. Yeah, you'd be swell.
Less makeup, only the ears, but the rest. And I was essentially a Spock fan, so yes, Vulcans for me all the way.
I said a Q.
I feel like I should say I'm Spartacus. I want to be the Borg Queen.
We could both be the Borg Queen.
Okay.
The thing about the Borg Queen is that she can go anywhere. She can be anything. There can be multiple Borg Queens. We just haven't met them yet.
I'm on your team.
Absolutely.
All right.
I would be just thrilled to be a part of any of them. That sounds like a lame answer, but it's really true, because it's just a fun franchise to be a part of. And, you know, I mean, I would prefer less makeup, but I got really lucky with Lal, had no makeup and a wig, and that was it. But I would do the makeup. I would do it. I'm not claustrophobic. I could handle it. So there you go.
You say that now.
Okay, so I'm a little claustrophobic. 2 hours.
Alice, while we're on the subject of the Borg Queen, can you explain to us the amazing, how they achieved the amazing opening sequence with you coming down from the ceiling? Because it's stunningly realised.
They, I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this correctly. It was done in each segment, and there were two segments. The coming down was one segment, and the other segment was the moment when the head slots into the body and she walks forward. So each segment was shot in two versions. The first one, they put me on a cradle, a horizontal cradle on a crane. I had the makeup, and they attached the spine to my chest. And so I was lying horizontal on a cradle, which was on the top of a crane about 30 feet up in the air, with the neck, the spine, the silver spine, hanging down the front. And they wrapped the rest of me in blue screen cloth. And then they brought me down on the crane by a sort of circuitous path and deposited me on a cross on the ground. And the camera had what's called a motion control head, in that there's a little computer associated with the camera that memorizes the move that the camera and the crane have taken exactly and can repeat it. So then they take me out and they take the crane out and they shoot the set without any of us in it. And then they marry the two together in the computer. And then they did that with the other shot as well, of me, of the head dropping into the body. So they again, the bits of me were in blue screen cloth or blue screen paint, and then they dropped the head in the computer. But as I said at the opening ceremony, in fact, they didn't quite get it right. And the head and the body didn't quite slot together in the shooting. I mean, we had 2 days of rehearsal, just rehearsing this. And when we shot it, they didn't quite get it right. And it took them a couple of months, just a dedicated team of computer wizards, to actually make it seamless. But you're right, they truly pulled it off. No one will have an entrance like that ever again. Yeah.
Do another question from the audience, please. Well, they're all coming up now, right? Yeah, up here and run. Keep your hands up. Could you pass this along, please?
If at all, what is your favourite blooper? Like, funny scene that's happened where you've gone to say a line and completely said it wrong, cracked up, that kind of thing.
I hate to say, I don't think I made any. I know that's awfully boring, but I tend to know my lines. I'm sorry. Go. Obviously, you have a story to tell.
No, I don't. I mean, do you mean, I'm not sure what you mean if, like, we've ruined our lines. What, I think anything, for me anyway, would get lost in translation. I can't remember. Not remembering. Yeah, I don't know. We need a gag reel for that, commonly known as, I bet you guys, if you have any. The thing is, if I can just say this about working with those, at least on Next Generation, they're so funny that they're dangerous. I mean, my difficulty was when I first got there, because I only appear to be a professional. I'm a real giggler, and I had all of this techno stuff to remember, and I was terrified, and I had the thing on, and it was, I was there since 4, and I feared for my concentration. And those guys mess around right up until action. They say the most horribly funny things. They go back and forth. So I brought a magazine with me. In those days, Omni was a great magazine, brilliant magazine. But I pretended that I was a very serious actress and that I had to concentrate because I knew that I was so, I could have been fired in an instant because they were so funny. So there was constant stuff like that going on. But yeah, I was always in danger of laughing, if that means anything, just because they were just so crazy funny. And here we all with all these heads on, and it's, 11 o'clock at night, and we've been there for 11 hours. And so it's all kind of a big blooper, if you really,
That's actually very true, because I basically worked with Jonathan, Brent, and Patrick. And they hadn't worked together for several years, right? The series had stopped, and then 2 years, whatever, later they did. And they were hilarious. I mean, Jonathan would say, roll cameras, and they would still be messing around until he said action. And then they would be right there. I could not do that if my life depended on it. I could not do that.
I think it's part of the way they
I was lucky because I was under all of that makeup, and I always had people fussing around me, so I could use that as my shield. But if you can't do that, and I can't do that, it's terrifying. I mean, when I was at the Royal Shakespeare Company, there was a wonderful actor who you may know of, a man called Pete Postlethwaite. Yes. So Pete would be playing poker in the green room, and he would sit, he had timed how long it took him to lay down his cards and run from the green room via backstage and walk onto the stage. And I was a very new actress. It frightened me so much that I pretended it wasn't happening. I was so frightened that eventually I was playing Cordelia, right, in King Lear. So she comes on at the beginning and then she's gone for 2.5 hours and she comes on at the end. I started off listening to the whole play in my dressing room over the tannoy. By the end, I was so frightened that I stood in the wings from beginning to end so that I wouldn't run away. Because I thought, if I don't stand here, I'm going to run out of the theatre and they'll never find me. So some people can do that. Pete was laying down his cards and just walking onto the stage, cool as a cucumber. I would have died if I tried to do that. It's an amazing gift some people have.
Oh, this doesn't qualify as a blooper, but I will admit that working with Patrick Stewart, he had a presence that was so strong and so potent that when I was working opposite him, I had everything I could do to stay focused on myself and what I would bring. When he said his line, sometimes I just looked at him like, oh my God, you're so magnificent. And then it would be like, oh, you know, I was supposed to say my line. But he had completely taken me out of the scene because, and again, don't mean to exaggerate, but he just had such a powerful presence that I had to kind of mentally gird myself to hold my own opposite him and to be able to look him in the eye because he completely undid me. Yeah. Otherwise. So that was an interesting little mental gymnastics that I had to do to stay opposite him and you know, possess myself because he was just that charming, and I had to do it in a wig and the prosthetic and the wool, and so I didn't feel like myself, you know. I certainly didn't feel like I would at a cocktail party. I felt very unsexy and militaristic and so covered up, and so the whole thing, you know, for me was just, I was leaping over all kinds of issues in my brain. But yeah, those guys are amazing. You know, they would change lines, or he would get the scene at the last minute and be able to embrace the vernacular, these multisyllabic terms and his own lines. And I mean, his power of concentration was breathtaking. All of them, well-honed machines. And really a privilege to work with that entire cast.
I have a question for you, Alice. It's about you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, hi.
It's about your project, which is nearly finished. String Now Jailed Caesar.
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, it's a very challenging, in-your-face, but I think extremely interesting movie. We shot, it is an account of the adolescence of Julius Caesar, the bit that no one talks about. He was truly, and if you have to read all the writers like Suetonius and Pliny and whatever, his contemporaries, to find out about that period in his life. And he was considered a total washout, total waste of space, couldn't hold down a job. He was, in Roman terms at that point, sexually inappropriate because he was bisexual, and it was deeply frowned upon at that time. And then in his late 30s, he goes on this trajectory that makes him Caesar. And so the film explores his journey to that spot. But we don't tell it in ancient Rome. It's told in 3 prisons. Cardiff Prison in Wales, Drumheller Penitentiary in Alberta, and Portsmouth Prison in South Africa. And with 500 prisoners, and there are some wonderful, wonderful actors in it, but several of the principal roles are played by prisoners. And it's it's multiple layers of various universes, all on top of each other and all intersecting. And to our astonishment, it's been picked up by a US art house distributor called Corinth, and it will be released in the States in the autumn. And I'm going to make a similar plea that you go to Jail Caesar, Jail Caesar.com, and look at the website, and if you possibly can, go to IMDb and give it some stars, even though you haven't seen it. Because, and this is really important, you, as the audience, now drive movie sales. Believe it or not. We were asked by Corinth to initiate a massive social media campaign, and so we've employed someone who is pulling all of the things together. I know nothing about it, but I don't think you, perhaps you do, understand the power that you actually wield now. Because marketing is now social media. That's where they spend their money. And you are social media. Everyone who goes online and likes stuff or follows stuff or is interested in stuff actually supports what they're interested in. And the studios pay attention, believe me. So use that power to support work that, the kind of work that you're interested in, because it's of immense value to the filmmakers. We're finishing, may I say this? Because it may be of interest to the audience. We're at the final stages of the next movie, my husband and I, that we shot before Jail Caesar. And we shot it, 3 of us, wrote the movie together and shot it together. The other person is Austrian. His name is Günther Singer. And he's not an actor. He was a member of the Austrian Special Forces anti-terrorist squad. And the movie essentially tells his story, which is pretty devastating. He was approached, his whole unit was approached by the French Foreign Legion, and they were shown footage of what was happening in Bosnia at the time of the ethnic cleansing, right at the beginning. And the whole unit relinquishes their Austrian citizenship, become members of the French Foreign Legion, 175 of them, and they're dropped into Bosnia undercover. And 3 months later, there were 28 of them left. And they were pulled out of Bosnia, and they were never allowed to tell anyone what had happened. And this man he did and saw things that no human being ever should. And he's spent the rest of his life recovering in profound post-traumatic stress from that period. So that's the next movie, and it'll hopefully be on the festival circuit by the end of the year. But again, you know, if it's a serious movie about the damage that war does to individuals. But the interesting thing is, for all filmmakers and writers in the audience, the technology now has put us all in a place where we can do it if you have a really good story. People want to hear good stories. You're no longer dependent on a studio green-lighting a good story. Just gather together a passionate group of people and tell the story in the best way you can, because you can shoot it and cut it yourself.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay.
Well, I'm afraid we're out of time. So please go mad for the lovely ladies of Star Trek!
Click these links to see more from Destination Star Trek Germany.